It was a warm summer's day, perhaps the hottest of the year, and I came to visit Brant Broughton Church in Lincolnshire. The church is a very impressive building, both outside and in. Externally, the church is a very imposing late 14th century spire that soars upwards nearly 200 feet into the air, and the spire can be seen for miles around in these flatlands to the south of Lincoln. Much of the body of this church is of the later 14th century and in what is called the decorated style of architecture. Now, this period of English Gothic architecture is known as decorated due to the profusion of sculptured decoration on buildings, and this church has two very fine porches with a broad display of figure sculpture on them. An example of just how playful the decorated style of architecture is the south porch of the church, which dates from about 1330. It is vaulted on the inside with bosses decorated with crisp foliage, and on the outside has a band of projecting sculptures. Notice that one of these sculptures is in the form of a man with his pants pulled down, showing us his behind. He's been exposing himself like that for close to 700 years. We've just seen the south side and the south porch of the church, but you enter Brant Broughton Church, which is dedicated to St Helen, from the north side and through yet another very fine late decorated porch. Notice the coat of arms of one of the 15th century patrons over the church door. I really should look up who this is. The porch is beautifully vaulted on the inside. So we step through the north door and into a wide and spacious church interior that was gloriously cool on this August day. Now, had you set foot into this church around 1850, you would have found a building that was in considerable decay and virtually semi-derelict. The interior of the church owes its present state to the great vision of a Victorian rector, a man called Frederick Sutton. In the mid to late 1870s, Sutton employed a partnership of two men, George Bodley and Thomas Garner, to restore and refurnish this church. Their vision was to take the church back in time to some semblance of its medieval form. There was a Gothic revival mania, a real passion for the art and architecture of the Middle Ages in this period. And what Bodley and Garner created here was a glorious and sublime medieval church interior that would be a place of transcendent encounter with God, a place that engaged the visual and aesthetic sense and lifted the mind and soul to heaven. In essence, what they created here at St Helens Brant Broughton was a beautiful place of worship that was a gilded vision of heaven. The medieval chancel of the church had been demolished in 1812 and replaced with a rather mean structure, but Bodley and Garner built a new chancel on the old foundations. The chancel is like a jewel in the centre of a gilded casket. The high altar, designed by Bodley, has rich frontals and textiles made by Watts & Co., a firm that the partners established to produce this sort of work. For the altarpiece behind the altar, Canon Frederick Sutton gave an original medieval painting he had found in a junk shop in Newark. A painting portraying the Ascension of Christ by Johann von Soest. Dating from between 1465 and 1490, it was part of the high altar reredos of the Benedictine Abbey of Liesborn in Westphalia. The panels were sold in 1807 during the French occupation of Westphalia and scattered. It adds an additional richness to this already sumptuous building. Right through the church there is also very fine metal work, wrought iron candle brackets and chandeliers hanging from the ceilings. These were designed by Canon Sutton, who, as we will see in a moment, was a very accomplished artist himself, and they were made by the local blacksmiths F. Cauldron and Sons. Canon Sutton was quite an authority on organs and organ cases, and he had designed organ cases for Bodley and Garner for their work at other churches, and the organ case at Brant Broughton is probably his work. The roofs and vaults throughout the church are all painted in rich colours. The chancel has a painted wooden Lierne vault, and the roofs of the nave and aisles, the medieval originals, have been painted in bold polychromy, apparently replicating the original decoration found on the beams. On the nave roof are ranks of angels with gilded wings, for as we look up, we look towards a vision of heaven breaking through to earth. As we pan around from the west end of the nave, you can see the rood screen that divides the nave from the chancel, topped with its medieval style Great Rood Cross. This was a later edition of 1919. Then comes into view the medieval late 15th century font with its towering cover. The cover, which was added in 1889 to the design of Thomas Garner, is loosely based on medieval East Anglian examples. It is one of my favourite features of this church, for two little doors open to reveal colour within, painted decoration, and three carved figures of St Agnes, St Michael and St Nicholas. Every window in Brant Broughton Church is filled with Victorian stained glass. That in the chancel is by Burleson and Grills, a well-known firm, but the rest in the nave aisles and even in the high windows of the clerestory at the top of the nave was made by Canon Sutton and his brother Augustus in their own workshop over the coach house of the adjoining rectory. They were really splendid artists of great talent, and as well as producing the glass here, they were also commissioned to glaze 30 of the windows in Lincoln Cathedral. On the wall of the North Chapel is one of their original cartoons. One last thing to note before I leave is this rare thing. A battered 14th century sculpture of the Holy Trinity with two figures, the donors of the piece, kneeling in prayer before the Godhead, one figure a man in armour. Here in Brant Broughton, old blends with new. The medieval fabric has been preserved and very much enhanced by the work of Canon Sutton and Bodley and Garner. And you have here a building that evokes the colour and devotional atmosphere of a medieval church interior. Thanks for watching.